I'm suspecting, based on what I know about these kinds of cases, the daughter was complaining about dad for some reason. And the mom says, well, why don't you just talk to your dad about that?
Mm-hmm.
And the daughter interpreted it as mom says, I can say anything I want to dad.
Right.
Maybe mom's even secretly that the daughter will say it exactly that way to dad.
Right. Yep.
But mom's not teaching her daughter how to contain her boundary.
Exactly.
Or can contain her emotions so that she doesn't hurt the other person. She isn't teaching her there's a way to say how you feel to another person so that you're not hurting them, but you're expressing your feelings to them to create understanding.
Yep.
Creating hurt or creating understanding are two different things, correct?
Absolutely.
Hey, this is Diane Dirks.
And I'm Rick Voiles.
We've been working with co-parents in conflict for more than 2 decades. We've taught classes, written books, counseled parents, empathized, and agonized a few times to help people make sense of their complicated families.
We were talking one day, and it occurred to us that helping the most difficult cases comes down to one simple concept. Is one parent willing to let go of the tug-of-war rope, or is it worth it to hold on and fight?
So we invite you to take this journey with us each episode as we tackle the questions, should you hold on or let it go?
Welcome to Co-Parent Dilemmas, where we give you practical solutions to those impossible co-parents. Hello, Diane.
Hello. You say that like you've said it before.
This is a pre-recorded introduction. No.
Every time I say it, I try to say it a little differently. So it doesn't sound recorded, but anyway.
Right.
So yeah, welcome. Welcome 2025. Is this the first time you and I have recorded in the new year? I think
it is.
Oh, yeah. So does it feel different to you?
No.
I know. I don't even feel older. That's encouraging.
Oh, gee.
I just feel like time is going by so fast. Can you believe this year will be our 4th year doing this podcast?
I cannot. I can remember conversations going, well, I don't know what we're going to talk about after the first 7 episodes.
I know. Well, there were so many nuances
there
to
have
co-parenting
been
conflict.
Yes.
So my good news story for today is really a coincidence. Do you believe in coincidences?
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah. But this one was way coincidental. So from Chicago comes the story of a sweet reunion between a mother and son who, despite having met many times, never knew of their relationship.
Really?
I love this name. Give Me Some Sugar Bakery is the name of the bakery. Recently hired employee Hunter Varmer is particularly proud of his pound cake. He had always loved stopping in for a sweet treat or breakfast at the cafe, particularly because of the service from the baker behind the counter. Her name was Lenore Lindsay. And though she didn't know Varmer's name, she knew him as a valuable customer. But the relationship went far deeper than that, though neither knew it. They were mother and son.
Oh,
Lindsay gave up her newborn son for adoption when she gave birth to Varmer at just 17 years old. Varmer, for his part, didn't know he was adopted until he was 34 years old, at which point he went and submitted his DNA to one of those tests, right?
Yep.
And then one day he received a strange call. I think what happens is if they match your DNA with a family member, then these sites call that family member and say, do you want to be connected with this person? So they apparently had called the mom, and then she called him.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day he received a strange call. I was on the phone talking to my friend when a call came through from the bakery. And he was thinking, well, why is the bakery calling me? Even though he was told to expect a call from his biological mother, he didn't suspect even for a moment any connection between it and the bakery. And so Lindsay, who said if she had seen Varmer's photo, the shock would have been immediate. Instead, with only a name, the call began with a show of awkwardness that eventually shattered with loud enthusiasm when they both realized they knew each other.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that awesome?
That is awesome.
So she's calling. She didn't have his picture, but at the bakery, she didn't know his name. So she's calling saying, hey, I understand you're looking for me. And here I am. And then they got to talking. Can you imagine that conversation? Where do you
Man.
live? Oh, I'm in Chicago. Where at in Chicago? Oh, I live on this street. Oh, well, I own a bakery right down the street from there. Oh my God.
Yes.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, if I'm expecting a phone call from my biological mother, I'm thinking, anywhere in the
Right.
US or the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just down the
Not the
street.
bakery down the corner.
Wow. I don't know if that's coincidence or divine intervention.
Well, they could be synonymous.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. Oh, we finally have a date for our parent pediatrician meeting.
All
And we're going to
right.
have that on January 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
2 p.m. All right.
So if you are a non-impossible VIP through Patreon, then you will get first consideration if you want to do it, but everybody's invited. So just let me know because it's going to be a Zoom meeting. It's probably going to be 1 or maybe an hour and a half, I'm assuming, with a pediatrician who's also going to try to get some other physicians on the call. And the goal of the meeting is to have parents talk to physicians about how difficult it is when you're in a high conflict situation, when the doctors don't write things in their notes appropriately, or they only see one parent and then they take for granted everything that parent says about the other parent, and they don't take the time to really explore that this might be a situation or a different family dynamic than they're used to.
Yes.
And so we really are hoping for Dr. Ray to help us come up with some guidelines for medical professionals that we can kind of put out there that hopefully some medical professionals will take seriously and go, yeah, I've had my share of high conflict parents in here and they drive me nuts. And, and there's some ways for the medical professionals to manage that a little bit better so as to not create additional conflict, but also protect themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
And please don't assume that there's 100 people out there that are going to be sharing their experience. Your experience and your voice needs to be heard.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
Step
absolutely.
up, please, and help us with this project.
Yep. So today we're going to talk about feelings.
Uh-oh.
Rick, you don't seem excited.
Well, the stereotype. Let's have a white male talk about feelings.
Wait a minute. Do you remember that song in the 70s called Feelings? Do you remember
I do.
that song?
Yep.
I think that was a white male singing the feelings. Whoa.
But I'll bet he didn't write it.
Yeah, that was just to get all the 12-year-old girls like me excited about. I do have a beef with music like that. When you're young, you hear all these men singing these very romantic songs, and it dupes you into thinking that men are really that romantic. It's just a ploy. It's a ploy.
Beware.
So, in full disclosure, Rick, you know nothing about what we're going to talk about today, correct?
I did get the email and glanced at it last night.
Yes, you know the email, but you and I typically spend a little bit of time before we record talking about what we're going to talk about, right?
Yep.
And what did I say to you this morning?
Said, I want to be at the advantage and put you at the disadvantage, Rick.
I want to do a little mind trickery.
Okay. All right.
There are other terms for that, but I'm going to call it mind trickery today. No, really. I just thought this would be a better conversation, kind of cold, because you're very good at challenging me on things that I think I know. Right. So, I spent a lot of time last night thinking about this and thinking I get it resolved, and then I present it, and then you're like, wait a minute, which I appreciate. So rather than doing that ahead of time, I thought it would be better to do that in real time.
Wow, let's see what happens.
So I'm going to read the email first, and then we'll kind of jump in. This is from Todd. And he said, I'm a little frustrated with my 12-year-old daughter who has been very rude to me and her sister lately, which, by the way, that's normal function for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
She seems to think she's an adult and repeatedly says, Mom says it's okay to have my feelings. And if I don't like you, I'm allowed to tell you. I doubt her mom said it exactly that way, but when I have mentioned our daughter's attitude to her mom, I get something like, well, I don't want her to feel minimized like you used to do to me. Her feelings are valid and you need to affirm them. Help me understand this whole idea around feelings. Just because I feel like everyone hates me, does that make it true? Shouldn't I determine what's behind my feelings before I give credence to them? Just wondering how to respond to my daughter without telling her she's right to not like me.
Hmm.
So, do you remember the episode that we did about the feelings and thinking triangle?
Yes.
I'm gonna right now. I'm gonna tell you. Let's see here. Yeah, it's season 5, episode 10. It was the critical skills. It was the first critical skills thing that we did. Why validating your kids' feelings work.
Yeah.
Well, then I got Todd's email and I started thinking more deeply, which is always dangerous,
Uh-oh.
about the advice that we gave. And remember, we talked about how important it is for your kids to not feel like you're discounting or invalidating their feelings, because
Right.
then they don't learn to trust them. And we need to trust our feelings, correct?
Right.
So I read this quote. This is really what got this going for me. And this was on Pinterest. I'm a Pinterest fan. I'm just going through, and all of a sudden, this quote pops up. And it says this: feelings are like children. You don't want them driving the car, but it's also not a good idea to stuff them in the trunk.
I like it. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So you don't want your feelings to completely drive everything, but the opposite would be to stuff them. So if we think of them as our children, they're fragile in some respects. We have something to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Just like the triangle, you know, how we manage our feelings with our thoughts, our
Yep.
logic, and our values play a big part in managing our feelings. But I thought Todd's question was very interesting in that, can we over validate somebody's feelings?
Oh, interesting.
Or can we misvalidate, if that's even a word? And what
Right.
does validation mean? So I think we're going
Hmm.
to be talking somewhat about semantics, what words actually mean, because I think our culture, and I love words, I'm a wordsmith. I
Me
love
too.
picking apart words.
Yep.
So this idea of validating feelings is somewhat ubiquitous, which is one of my favorite words,
Yeah.
meaning it's commonplace, right?
Uh-huh.
That everybody says it. Oh, we must validate our feelings. And some people have good reason to not.
Yes.
So I want you to put your thinking cap on, Rick, about
Okay.
feelings. Is that a is that an oxymoron? Put your thinking cap on about feelings.
Let me see how I feel about my thinking cap.
Yes, yes. So this episode is either going to flip or flop. I'm not sure which.
We're not sure. Let's go
We
for
might
it.
flip people's feelings or thoughts about this whole topic, or it might just flop. I don't know. So I'm going to ask you a question, and this is just going to be an interview.
Oh,
And
all right.
we'll see how you do. So, are we all entitled to our feelings?
Gosh, entitled. Feelings are inevitable. It's not I get to have them. It's I have them.
Okay.
They can't be stopped.
So, is it wrong to think that whatever feeling I have, I'm entitled to it?
I'm stumbling with the word entitled. I would say that whatever feeling I'm having is real. Um, and there's, and I didn't, do I manufacture my feelings or do they just come to me? That's, so I'm going to say yes for now. Entitled, yes, they are mine.
Okay. And what about validity? If is
Ah,
validating feelings the same as your feelings being valid?
No,
Oh,
so I have, well, let's say, are they validated, or are they valid? I think I can acknowledge that I have them. I can even share with somebody I'm having a feeling, and then I can think about, is the feeling valid or not? Because, and I think this might be where you're headed. I have social anxiety, and
okay.
I don't want to go to places where
Hmm.
there are people. And so I will come up with all kinds of reasons why this is not a good idea. But as soon as I get there,
Yes.
right? And so I've always struggled with self-esteem issues and self-doubt. So I can have a feeling of insecurity. Yes, I am insecure. Should I act on that
Hmm.
insecurity? It's, because we can have bad thoughts go through our heads, and they say, yeah, it's okay to have a bird fly through, just don't build a nest.
Yeah.
And so I think of it that way. Yes, they're valid. Yes, they're mine. Yes, I'm entitled to them. Should I have other people validate them? Not necessarily.
So the question is, when does validation become enabling?
That's rich. When does
So
val
if Janet said, Rick, we're going to a party tonight. It's really important to me because all my coworkers will be there, and you have all this anxiety, and I don't know what you do when you have anxiety, but you start giving her all the, I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, or, whatever. And she just pat you on the head and said, oh, I'm sorry. I can understand why you'd feel that way. And she goes off to the party alone. And you don't never have the experience of going to the party and realizing, hey, I actually enjoy it once I'm here. Is she enabling your anxiety by validating your feeling?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that would be enabling. And there's a very fine balance between, in any kind of relationship, between stretching and pushing somebody because you love them. It's kind of what they call,
Mhm.
what do they call that kind of truth? Where I'm tough love kind of thing,
Okay.
versus,
So
yeah, you're okay the way you are, and I'll just let you be.
so the hearer and the sharer each have a responsibility, would you say?
Yes.
Because Janet could say, I hear you. I know this is difficult for you. And she could validate that way. But I
Mm-hmm.
also know that when we get to the party, you're going to be okay. So I
Right.
really think you should go.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a challenge, there's a validation plus a challenge.
Yes.
So there are a few things I think that affect this. And we just spoke of one of them. One of them is, what if your feelings are based on an assumption?
Mm-hmm.
Then are you entitled to that feeling? So let's just say, let's use some fictional characters. Let's use John and Jane
Okay.
for the sake of talking about it. Um, Jane walks in to the living room, and John is on the couch, and he immediately hides his phone from her,
Okay.
and she becomes suspicious.
Yep.
And she assumes that he must be talking to a woman or looking at girly pictures. I don't know, whatever she
Mm-hmm.
assumes he's doing. And she gets angry and feels betrayed. Now, from John's point of view, he was shopping for a diamond ring for Jane.
Right. Right.
So if Jane doesn't ask the right questions and get more information and runs with her assumptions and runs off and, starts crying, what is John to do? Is he just supposed to say she's entitled to her feelings?
I I I think there's a way to. I liked your distinction between validate the feelings, but not assert their validation.
That's confusing.
I know, I know. No, okay. You're having those feelings, and typically, here's where my mind goes after years of of training and changing and learning and growing is that there's something fueling this for her. Let's say this was Janet and I experience. In fact, we have had an experience like this that we still talk about. So the
Are you sure are you sure she's okay with you talking about this to the whole world?
that's all I'm going to say. But the idea that there's something that has triggered this response, and that is something that is about you and your growth and your circumstance and your situations. I used to talk about it. We're all broken and we all have demons, and we can't get rid of the demons. We just have to learn to dance with the demon when we can. So, because I could, when I, in my more selfish role, I would say something like, well, that sounds like a personal problem to me. You should go work on that.
And I'm sure Jane would just go work on it.
Right. That's exactly what you would do with an attorney and divorce papers.
Because when you're having a feeling, as we talked about in the pyramid, when you're having a feeling and your brain is taken over by this feeling, you're not going to be listening to logic. So,
No.
John is going to jump up and go, "What are you so mad about? And what are you looking at on your phone that you had to hide from me?" And then he has to reveal a secret. He's going to buy you a diamond ring for your birthday. And he doesn't want to do that. So he's trying to be defensive without giving away the secret. And it gets worse and blah, blah, blah. And all these feelings turn into something else. The next thing you know, they're fighting about what happened last week or last month or last year, and they're breaking up.
So you were at our you were at our meeting.
But you're still together, so somehow you worked it out.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so feelings can be based on assumptions, and they can be I don't want to say erroneous. See, this is where I struggled with the words, because I do believe, like you said, Rick, feelings are simply that. They're just feelings. They come about for a variety of reasons, but if we give too much credence to them, they're driving the car.
Yep.
And then if they drive the car, then we can really find ourselves in bad relationships or ruining our relationships or running with a thought and a feeling that has no truth to it. So there's another word. Are our feelings true?
Mm-hmm.
Do they represent truth? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Sometimes feelings are just a mood.
Yeah.
And like you said, when we act on our mood, sometimes we then take it out on the wrong person. We project it, So Jane comes home from work. She's had a particularly bad day. She has asked John to do something that he never does anyway, like, please put your socks in the hamper.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes home from work and once again sees John's socks on the bedroom floor, and she blows a gasket. Is she entitled to blow up? Is she entitled to be that angry?
Okay. She's not blowing up in front of John.
Oh, no, she is.
She is. Right. Because she could get, if she's upset, she's frustrated, she's, screaming in the bedroom by herself. Yeah, that's all perfectly fine. And maybe even necessary for her to do. Once you start blowing up to John, then you're starting to violate your own containment boundary.
Ah, okay. Say more about that, the containment boundary.
Yeah, there's two boundaries that we have that function. One is a boundary that protects us from exterior things, accusations, verbal abuse, and we can put up a boundary and not let it in, and it doesn't define me. Then there's a containment boundary, an internal, that I have a right to all of my feelings, anxiety, frustrations, and to be able to say them and express them. But if I plow through my containment boundary, then I'm running over the other person's protective boundary, and that's unhealthy to do. So I can have it, but I need to be careful how I express it to another person.
So boundaries have a dual purpose: to protect yourself from someone else violating them, but also to protect someone else from you violating your own boundary.
Yes.
Yeah, right. A couple more, and then I promise we'll get to Todd's question.
Who's Todd?
So, what if your feelings are based on delusion?
Oh, wow. We talking like a disorder? And
Well, so let's say that Jane says, we could buy that house and car that we want to go on that vacation if we would only win the lottery.
mm-hmm.
And John says, okay. And they buy a lottery ticket and she doesn't win. And she becomes extremely depressed for weeks. And she's sad. She's
Mm-hmm.
very sad because she hasn't won the lottery. Would you say that's a little bit delusional?
Yeah, I think I'm back to the 12-year-old and the romantic vision of what life's going to be like with the songs, which in some way is inevitable, where our ideal clashes with reality. And yes, we get hurt. I'm struggling with the word delusional.
Well,
Misplaced.
how is John supposed to help Jane through her depression? Because his logic is saying the chances of winning the lottery are like 1 in 3 billion. So,
Yes.
So again, not understanding where it's coming from because it's not logical. Is she entitled to that feeling? Is it valid? Does it represent truth? I mean, she's having it. It's no question she's having it.
Right.
Someone like me, a therapist, would say, I doubt this has anything to do with the lottery. And it goes back to some grand disappointment she had at some earlier time in her life. And she's being triggered by not winning the lottery. But since John's not a therapist, he's going, what the? Right.
Right. So if I were John in that situation, I think I would take some responsibility for the situation, that I didn't speak up to begin with and try to apply logic when there was a conversation about thinking and decision making.
Yeah.
I wouldn't sit down with the depression and go, well, you don't have a right to feel depressed because, it was a stupid assumption to begin with.
Yeah.
It would be what can I do to help you get through this? And gosh, I mean, could I offer another delusional idea that would make her feel better and not be depressed anymore?
How does John know that this isn't a manipulation to get him to buy that house she really wants?
Oh my gosh, change the conversation to birth control, and you've really got a hornet's nest there. So now wait, you lost me. She's manipulating him and now she's depressed because it didn't work?
No, well, maybe the depression is a manipulation because she wanted to win that lottery so she could buy that house. And now she's so severely depressed, John's going to be thinking, well, maybe, geez, I'll just buy you that. Maybe if the house is what you need. What if her depression isn't true depression, but it's a manipulation?
Well, you could do the same thing with anger, right? I'm going to make your life miserable until you do what I want you to do. Yes. Yes. So I'm not sure. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a feeling. I would call that manipulation. Strategy.
Okay. Yep. What if the feeling is based in misinformation? And we have a lot of that going on in our world right now, right? Because we don't know what information is necessarily true most of the time because AI is wildly popular, and who knows whether that voice you're hearing is really the voice of that person. It's crazy. But it's easy to have a feeling when you hear something disturbing that might not be true.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So John's best friend comes to him and says, John, I hate to tell you this, but I saw Jane the other day at a restaurant. She was with a man and they were holding hands.
Mm-hmm.
John freaks out. Jane comes home that night and he confronts her. So who's the guy you're with? I have a credible source. This is John's best friend, a credible source that you are seeing another man.
Mm-hmm.
Were you, in fact, at such and such restaurant at noon on Friday? No, I wasn't. She proceeds to freak out and say, I was at work and I don't know what you're talking about. And she's deny, 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 deny. But that's not good enough because John's going by his friend's objective point of view, correct?
Best friend, right?
So Monday morning, John's best friend calls him and says, Hey, dude, I'm sorry, but I think I made a mistake. I think that I have a picture and I don't think it's Jane after all.
Uh-huh.
Now, is John going to be more forgiving towards Jane?
Yes. He's going to feel differently.
Why wasn't he forgiving to her when she denied it?
Because he's an insecure wimp.
Oh, did I hit a nerve? Mr. Insecurity.
Yes. No, again, he plowed through his containment boundary, and it didn't, he let his emotions that were triggered by some demon, right? Crash through his containment boundary and violated her.
How is it, though, that he trusted his best friend more than his own wife?
That's the conversation that he's going to eventually have to have with himself and with his wife. What was it about that triggered such a response that he felt he had the right to plow through his, and this could be an attachment injury as a result for her. They could cause all kinds of problems. So yes, we're talking about then how do we express the feelings that we have, even if they're based on misinformation. My insecurity, my self-doubts, the demons in my head are all based on misinformation. And yet they influence my feelings so much.
Sure. And based on assumptions or based on maybe your mood or delusions. There's all kinds of things that play into us having a particular feeling.
Yep.
Largely our past experiences, right?
Yep.
If your brain is saying, oh, we've seen this before. I've seen this movie before. Here's how I want you to react.
Yes.
But sometimes our brains lie to us.
Oh.
Or they tell us things to look out for, and we take that very seriously, but we let it drive the car instead of managing it, right, with our logic. Hey, listeners, the response to the daily devotional for frustrated co-parents has been a pleasant surprise. The feedback I'm getting is that it helps to put co-parent issues in a biblical context and provides an additional and more peaceful challenge to do right by the children. If you've not yet subscribed, you can do so by following the link in the show notes. An option for a 7-day free trial is available, so you can test it out and see if this new start to your day gives you a little more peace about being a non-impossible. So I want to say to Todd, there's a difference between validating and agreeing with.
Yes.
Right? So I want to go back and read Todd's email one more time. Now that we've talked through all of this stuff. He said, I'm frustrated with my 12-year-old who's been very rude. She thinks she's an adult. That's no big shock. Repeatedly says, Mom says it's okay to have my feelings. And if I don't like you, I'm allowed to tell you. Where was Mom's error in what she said to her daughter, if in fact that's even true?
Well, part of it is, no, I don't think there is an error here. I'm allowed to tell you. Okay, I could grant that. How you tell me is very different than what your mom may be thinking.
Right. I'm suspecting, based on what I know about these kinds of cases, the daughter was complaining about dad for some reason. And the mom says, well, why don't you just talk to your dad about that? And the daughter interpreted it as, Mom says I can say anything I want to dad.
Right.
Maybe mom's even secretly that the daughter will say it exactly that way to dad.
Right. Yep.
But mom's not teaching her daughter how to contain her boundary.
Exactly.
Or can contain her emotions so that she doesn't hurt the other person. She isn't teaching her there's a way to say how you feel to another person so that you're not hurting them, but you're expressing them expressing your feelings to them to create understanding.
Yep.
Creating hurt or creating understanding are two different things, correct?
Absolutely.
He goes on to say, I doubt her mom said it that way. So good for you. You're kind of, giving mom the benefit of the doubt. But when I've mentioned it to our daughter's mom, she says something like, I don't want her to feel minimized like you did to me.
There's
So,
mom's mistake right there. Yep.
The mom is obviously triggered
Yes.
when her daughter comes home and says, I try to tell dad, but he just doesn't listen to me. And mom's like, oh, yeah, that's what he did to me for 10 years. So she's very triggered by that. So she's so protective of her daughter. She's like saying to her daughter, give it to him, drive the car.
Right.
Don't stay in the trunk. Get out and drive, which, neither one of those you want your children to do.
Right.
You don't want those feelings to drive, but you don't want to stuff them in the back somewhere. There's a balance. And I love what you brought up about the containment boundary. There's a boundary there for both me and you to take care of. And this also goes back to the responsibility of the sharer.
Yes.
And then the responsibility of the hearer.
Yes.
Right. And up to this point, we've talked about John and Jane, which is adult relationship. There is a difference, which is why we did that previous episode about feelings and logic and values, because, unlike John and Jane, your job isn't to teach each other, although you will hopefully learn from one another. But when you're a parent-child, it is your job to teach.
Yes.
So I think Todd's question is, what do I do when my co-parent is not teaching my child what to do with her feelings, and then I have to be the victim of those feelings that are driving everything? Is that how you kind of see his question?
Yes. And I want to normalize it a little bit more, because you've already said this is expected of a 12-year-old. If mom was not in this picture at all, he would be teaching her this same lesson, but with a different specific context.
Yeah. And he asks an interesting question. And I think he just gives this as an example. If I feel like everybody hates me, does that make it true? Just because I'm feeling it, does that make it true? I think what he's really asked, just because my daughter hears something from her mom about me and she has a feeling about it, does that make it true? So number one, it's possible that the daughter is getting misinformation. Is that possible?
Absolutely.
We see that a lot in alienated children. They're getting misinformation or a misinterpretation of past events.
Right.
Remember that time your dad stepped on your toe at the carnival? Yes. That makes him a bad, bad man, and the child is going, okay, that's, I think, egregious, because it's a young child and they're learning from somebody they trust. Which brings me to the next point. When John's friend told him something and then his wife defended herself, when you have two people in your life that you trust telling you opposite things, that's really, really hard.
It is.
So think about this child who she trusts both mom and dad and loves mom. Mom tells her whatever about dad. She goes to dad and, I agree with mom. You are a bad, bad person. Dad can defend all he wants, but who really needs to set her straight?
She needs to question both.
Yeah, but she's 12.
Yeah, she's 12.
So mom's the one who needs to say, I may have made a mistake.
It's unlikely she will do that, but yes, that's what should happen. Yep.
But I'm speaking to our listeners who may be guilty of this.
Yes.
If you are trying to influence your child against the other parent, another person they trust, and hoping that they will feel the same way you do about that other parent, you are setting your child up for failure.
Painful failure. Yes.
I want to speak to those parents out there who think that they're innocently, they may feel innocent about it.
Telling the truth about.
Very, very careful that
Yep.
if you are embellishing things about your co-parent to your children,
Mm-hmm.
if you are putting meaning on things that maybe is exaggerated, if you are being triggered and projecting those things onto your child because it's what you experienced, you may feel justified, entitled, and even valid because that's how you feel.
Yep.
But you're hurting your child, and there's no way out for the other parent because no matter how much Todd defends himself, what this child needs is for mom to say, okay, hold on. I don't want you to feel that way about your dad.
Yep.
I feel a certain way about your dad, but I do not want you to feel you have to feel the same way about your dad because that's how I feel. You have a different experience with him than I do or did.
Yep.
We had a spousal relationship. You have a parent child relationship
Yes.
that is way deeper than any spousal relationship I will ever have. So I want to implore those parents out there who maybe are feeling a little proud of themselves for their teen finally standing up to the other parent and giving them this or that. And I don't know your situation, and maybe what they're saying is completely appropriate, valid, entitled. But I just want to put this huge caution out there that this is what's happening on the other end. And there's no way for Todd to change her mind about what someone else she deeply trusts has told her about her own father.
Yeah.
So when I read things like this, I get that feeling in my gut of hopelessness
Yeah.
that I don't like. And, you know, we're all about giving parents hope here, right?
Yep.
So that's my first thought is I just want to put that out there. Be very, very, very careful about transferring your feelings onto your child because it's really not fair. And that's the stuff alienation is made of. Convincing kids that there couldn't have been any good. And in kids' attempt to survive, they will begin to take that on for you because of you, in spite of their love for the other parent, which is really, really sad and destructive to the child.
Yes.
So that's my soapbox in talking to the violating parent. Let's help Todd because we can't count on this mom
Oh, no.
being the one to say, you know, some of the things you've heard me say about your dad, a lot of it was because I was angry in the moment and I was trying to get through the divorce. And I really don't want you to take that on.
Mm-hmm.
That's my stuff. Like you said, Rick, that's a personal problem.
Right.
So I want you to have a fresh slate with your dad.
Right.
What can we say to Todd? How can he respond to his 12-year-old? How can he validate without agreeing with her feelings?
So I'm going to talk out of the thinking side for a moment, which means it's going to sound very easy what I'm going to describe.
Okay.
But it's not because there's
Of
feelings.
feelings. Right.
But I would want Todd to think about what if your best friend came to you and said, I hate you, I'm mad at you, you suck, you're a horrible human being, and then hangs up the phone or walks away. What would he say? What would he do? What would be his next steps to talking to his best friend? I'm sure it would include a lot of questions. I'm sure he wouldn't say, well, maybe not, but what I wouldn't want him to say is, you're an idiot for hating me. How dare you? No, I would want to ask some questions about what happened. What did I do? What damaged our relationship? I acknowledge that you're upset with me. Can we talk about it and do some basic repair skills, which means Todd may have to learn some repair skills. And that would be a foundation for how to think about talking to his 12-year-old, which makes this an opportunity.
I agree. However, have you spoken to a 12-year-old lately?
Well, here's what I would say to that. We're talking about 1,000 conversations like this. Yeah, it's not going to be in one
So what
sitting.
you're saying is instead of react,
yep,
and be upset. And, we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, when a child says, I hate you, and your instinct is you want to punish that.
Yes.
No child of mine is going to say that, right? And so that's going to be Todd's instinct to do the traditional. And again, whenever kids, even if you have a traditional home and traditional parenting style, when they turn 12, man, all bets are off. Like you have to rearrange your brain a little bit around parenting because they're getting so many messages from the world about how to do this. I mean, when I was coming up and I was 12, all my 12-year-old friends had parents just like mine who gave you the lay of the land. You either followed it or you didn't, or you'd be in trouble. And we just kind of just accepted that. No one told us there was any other option.
Nobody told us there was a back seat. We just stayed in the trunk.
Right. Exactly. I like that. Yeah. Now the messages are all over the place to these kids, and some of them I like, but it's almost like the pendulum has swung way to the other side. You have rights. No one should ever hurt your feelings. That's just wrong. Well, life is full of hurt feelings. There's nothing wrong with having feelings. And this is where I want to use the word all feelings are valid. But every time I think of the word of valid or validity, I think of rooted in truth.
Right.
And then I have a hard time with the word valid.
Yes.
So all feelings can be experienced.
Yeah. Yep.
Feelings are an experience.
Yes.
And you can't take away somebody's experience.
Mm-mm.
So I think what I want to say, instead of validation, which is the ubiquitous word out there, I want to say everyone has a right to their experience, but you also have a right to check whether that feeling is rooted in some sort of information or truth. So in the therapy world, we call this self-soothing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we want to teach the child.
Containment.
But Todd has to learn this first. Instead of reacting, he may need to step away and do a little self-soothing. And what that means is calm myself down. Why am I so reactive? What is it about this that causes me to react?
Mm-hmm.
Is it my relationship with her mother? Does she look just like her mom when she says this? Did I have a bad day at work today? Am I insecure and I can't handle my child not liking me? There's all kinds of reflective questions that are helpful to ask before you run with your feeling of anger about what she just said, right?
Yep.
But even adults struggle greatly. I struggle with this sometimes.
Absolutely.
We all want to react to what somebody says or feels. So it's going to take some work, but if we're going to teach the 12-year-old how to self-soothe, we have to model it.
Exactly. That is what's rich about this.
Right.
Yes.
So Todd should not react right away, even though somebody may be telling him to. And he probably needs to say, okay, we're going to end this conversation, but I will re-engage later after I've had a time to think about it.
Yes.
And then, think through, what could this be about? Even though I'm really mad at my co-parent, this might not be all his fault. And it sounds like all her fault. And it sounds like Todd did some of that. I doubt mom said it just that way. You don't take it word for word. But he knows mom well enough to know that she probably said something like that because she's all into this whole validation idea. And I'm not going to tell my child, oh, I can understand why you feel that way, when I don't understand why you feel that way. Right?
Right.
So Todd thinks validation is agreeing with the feeling.
No.
And so there is a finesse, and therapists have to learn how to do this, but we go to school to learn it, or we have a lot of supervision to learn how to do it. It's not a skill that most parents just automatically have to be able to
No.
say, how do I let my child know she has a right to that experience? And it's probably born from all kinds of things that she has learned, but at the same time, it might not be rooted in truth. You have
Yes.
to be careful, because if you start telling your child maybe what you've heard is not the truth, then they're starting now to say, okay, which one of you are liars?
Yes, exactly. Right.
Which one of my parents am I going to accept as the liar? I'd like to believe neither. So I want to just believe it's true. That way I don't have to believe the alternative, which is somebody's lying to me.
Yes.
And that's just a hard thing to combat, right?
Yep.
But when he comes back to his 12-year-old, and do come back, don't take the break.
No.
And say, and we'll talk about this later, but at a calmer moment, maybe at bedtime, maybe at dinner time the next day or something, you say, hey, I was thinking about what you said yesterday about how you just don't like me anymore. Okay. I'm glad you felt like you could tell me that, but let's talk about how to tell somebody that. What if you got mad at one of your friends and just said, I don't like you anymore? And then all of a sudden you hurt their feelings, and then they didn't want to be your friend anymore. You could really lose the relationship.
Yep.
The risk Todd is taking when he says that is she will say, well, yeah, I don't want this relationship. And so the risk is you might hear something you don't want to hear.
Right. Definitely.
What if she says that? Well, I just don't even want to be here anymore. I just don't want a relationship with you. I just don't like it. I think then Todd says something like, yeah, if I were you, I wouldn't like this either.
Yep.
You don't think it's me you don't like as much as you don't like this, whatever this is. Let's talk about what this is. This going back and forth between homes, this having to choose a side, this having to leave your mom's when you're in the middle of something fun with your friends because you have to come to dad's. Todd has to be very creative and dig really deep to figure out what this feels like to a 12-year-old girl.
Yes.
And that's not easy, especially if Todd didn't go through divorce as a child. To really put yourself in the shoes of a 12-year-old. Sometimes it's just none of my friends have to do this. Why do I have to do it? Or I don't like when I'm over here and I can't see my mom, because the 12-year-old girl, your mom is both your lifeline and your nemesis when you're 12 and you're a girl.
Right.
It's a love-hate relationship, right? Can't live with her, can't live without her. Dad is just kind of somewhere in the background, right?
Yep.
And that's very true sometimes with boys and their dads, depending on the situation, right? That becomes suddenly in puberty and onward, it becomes this vital relationship for me to bond with my same-sex parent so I can kind of figure out where my identity lies and all of that. Not always, but a lot of the time. So I think as parents, they have to be very sensitive to that. And it's hard when your kids go through puberty. I mean, within a week, you can see major changes in your child when they're this age. They suddenly grow an inch. Their voice changes, or they get an attitude. And you're like, what happened? The aliens came and took my daughter and left me with somebody else I don't know. They look the same, but they don't feel the same. So there's a lot of understanding that has to be mustered around this, to where Todd can, the best he can do is neutralize.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Not try to put yourself in a better light. You don't have to do that.
No.
Especially if the relationship was solid to begin with, it's okay. It's going to be okay.
Your kids don't have to like you for you to be a good parent.
Right. And in some respects, if they don't, that means you're doing something right.
Correct. Yes.
Right. But I think what Todd is talking about is the fear that we all have in these situations, that this is the beginning of an alienation.
Right.
The 12-year-old is finally getting power somehow from her mom. And that power is now translating into I can do what I want to do. I don't have to be here. I don't have to see you. I don't, when she's really saying, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yep.
So I hope that answers his questions about feelings, but this is less about feelings in the end. And I'm just coming to this now that we've gone through all of this rigmarole about feelings. This is less about feelings and more about the this.
Yes.
I think that's what I'm going to call this episode.
The this.
The this. What is the this?
Yes.
It's not about me. It's about this.
Yeah.
The environment. Here's another word, the milieu that we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
I know, I'm stretching it. The environment, where do we find ourselves and how is this now affecting my 12-year-old when it didn't affect her at all at 11?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I would repeat these kind of conversations over and over and over again, but I see an opening here for Todd to talk to his daughter. You talked about let's model it, that he could say, what you said to me yesterday caused feelings inside of me, and I would like to talk about those with you. And he could talk about, it hurts me when you say that. And he could even go, maybe not in the same conversation, but put some rules in the house that it's fine for you, again, to have those experiences of this. But I'm going to have to put some boundaries around how you express your feelings about this, and model how to do that while he's putting down rules for respect in his household.
Right. So I do think that's an important point, that that there needs to be consequences for disrespect.
Yep.
There would be consequences in the adult world when you disrespect a police officer.
Oh, yeah.
There are consequences in the adult world when you disrespect your boss. There are consequences in the adult world when you disrespect a friend. So everything you do in parenting needs to mirror real world. It's a simulation, right?
Yep.
Real world experiences, because again, we talked about this before. You're not teaching your kids values at this age. You're teaching them how to live in the real world. You're giving them an experience that says, if you did this in the real world,
right.
If you stole money from somebody in the real world, you're going to jail. So you will never steal money out of my wallet again.
Right.
But I think disrespect falls into the same category.
Yeah.
So what are the consequences? But like you said, sitting down and having a feelings conversation about the importance of it, how it can, you might think you don't want a relationship with me. And I get that. I'm your dad.
Yeah.
But you won't always feel that way. And, 10 years from now, we're going to laugh about this. But right now, my job is not to get you to like me and love me. My job is to help you navigate the real world in about 6 years.
Yes.
So here's going to be the consequences. And then you have that conversation and you turn around and you write an email to mom and say, here's some of the boundaries I've set in place around feelings. So that she's well aware of what you're doing, so that there's because, kids will manipulate.
Yeah.
She'll go home and cry to mom. Daddy was mean.
Yeah. See, you shouldn't like him. Yeah.
Yes.
Another reason. Yeah.
And Todd, I'm not saying any of this is easy.
Oh, no.
Because in the very beginning of this podcast, when I told Rick we were going to talk about feelings, there was this long hesitation, and I could just, our listeners couldn't see it on his face. But he was like, ugh. So isn't it amazing? We're ending the podcast by Rick saying to Todd, oh, we just need to sit down and have a conversation about feelings.
Yes.
So it is not as easy as it sounds.
No.
But it doesn't also have to represent the end of the world. But if Todd isn't careful and doesn't handle this correctly, then he could just be shooting himself in the foot over and over because all it's going to do is reinforce this idea that somehow he doesn't get it.
Right.
And for a 12-year-old girl, they just want somebody to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to get because we're not all 12 and we forget what it was like. And even if I remember when I was 12, my experience then was nothing like a 12-year-old's experience today.
No. In fact, I would highly recommend, I watched it again the other day, last week, to watch the movie Inside Out 2.
Yeah.
Yep. It's about her going through puberty. And I think, you described that instant change. They do it very well in that movie.
That's a great idea. So Todd, take your daughter to see Inside Out 2. Maybe she's already seen it. Doesn't matter. I don't even know if it's in the theaters, but it's streaming, I'm sure, somewhere.
Yep.
So have a movie night, make some popcorn, and then talk about the movie. Sometimes that's more helpful than talking about your own life. Talking about it on the screen, somebody else experiencing it, is just as educational and informative.
Yep.
Well, you did a good job, Rick.
Oh, boy, you're making me feel really good. Thank you.
I thought I was really going to trip you up, but you held your own.
Oh, boy.
And I think you actually taught me something. So,
wow.
Very good.
That is high praise. Thank you.
All right. It's good to explore all this with everybody, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye, everybody. Right. Bye. The information contained in this podcast is generic. It must not be misconstrued as constituting legal or psychological advice. Decisions relevant to any specific individual, family system, or case require the direct evaluation of skilled, child-centered professionals.